6:40 p.m. The time, it is October 18th, 2023. Our mission is to provide a safe and caring climate and culture in which we engage, inspire, educate, prepare, and empower all learners in partnership with their surrounding community to be successful in today's and tomorrow's society. Zach, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And then when you're ready, can you please call roll?
Scott Andresen. Natalie Copeland.
Here.
Al Dahlgren.
Here.
Zach Dorholt is here. Shannon Haas.
Here.
Monica Segura-Swartz.
Here.
Heather Weems.
Here.
And the following cabinet members and staff are present at the District Administration Office. Superintendent Dr. Lori Putnam, Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education Dr. Jason Harris, Assistant Superintendent of PK5 Education Nikki Hansen, Assistant Superintendent of E12 Education Services Dr. Mike Rivard, Executive Director of Community Education Adam Holm, Executive Director of Finance and Business Services Amy Skellerud, Executive Director of Human Resources and Labor Relations Tracy Flambeau, Executive Director of Operations Gary Ganji, Executive Director of Research Enrollment and Assessments Donna Roper, Media Technicians Paul Novak and Gordy Scott, and Custodian on site is Evan Voss.
Thank you. Next, I'm looking to a motion to approve tonight's Board of Education meeting agenda.
So move.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Scott and a second by Heather. Zach, can you call vote?
Natalie Copeland,
Yes.
Scott Andresen,
Yes.
Heather Weems,
Yes.
Monica Segura-Swartz,
Yes.
Shannon Haas.
Yes.
Zach Dorholtz, yes. Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Thank you. Then we have the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of non-controversial items that a board adopts routinely without debate. Any single member may remove an item from the consent agenda by requesting removal at the time the consent agenda is moved for adoption. On tonight's consent agenda, item A, approval of minutes of September 6, 2023 and September 20th, 2023. Item B, approval of bills and other financial transactions in the grand total amount of $8,045,513.94. Item C, approval of personnel staff changes. Item D, acceptance of grant awards, donations. Item E, quarterly expenditures for board members. Item F, call for bids, McKinley addition. Item G, Discovery HVAC project change orders totaling $3,351.88. Item H, Oak Hill HVAC project change orders totaling $22,733.09. Item I, Apollo HVAC project change orders totaling $50,815.07. And item J, government entity settlement agreements. At this time, does any board member wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Then I'm looking for a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda as read.
So move.
And do I have a second? I have a motion by Scott, a second by Zach. Zach, can you call vote?
Shannon Haas.
Yes.
Zach Dorholtz, yes. Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Natalie Copeland,
Yes.
Scott Andresen,
Yes.
Heather Weems,
Yes.
Monica Segura-Swartz.
Yes.
Thank you. Then we're moving on to information items. We have two tonight. First up, we have the Madison Elementary School presentation. We have Principal Becky Estrada presenting tonight. And she has some team members that we would
Okay.
love to have come up.
I have a posse. You want me to take the middle? Is that what you said, Gary? Okay. Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me now? Okay. Awesome. All right. I'm Becky Estrada, principal at Madison, and my two APs. You guys want to introduce yourself since you're at the table? Lindsay Nagorski, Assistant Principal at Madison.
I'm Ryan Yusuf, Assistant Principal at Madison.
Right. We are excited to be here presenting to you tonight. So good evening, Superintendent Putnam, School Board Chair Haas, and our guests. I'm very happy to be here tonight to share a few of my favorite Madison things. There are many. Tried to cut it down to about 8 minutes. I want to start by acknowledging that all of the highlights that I shared tonight are a culmination of the efforts of every educator inside the walls at Madison. It's really a collective effort to make sure that every scholar in our building is seen, heard, and ready for the world. So we started the year with our belief statement. We believe that all students can learn at high levels. We create the conditions necessary to reach, grow, inspire, teach, and challenge every student. We start every meeting, every newsletter with this belief statement. Conditions. There's a lot of research about the optimal conditions for learning. This year, the adults in our building are staying highly accountable to these things: to create relationships, to create engaging learning environments, to practicing predictable classroom routines for all of our students, to communicating high expectations for every student, and we believe that every hallway, lunchroom, classroom, nook, cranny, learning space has the potential to be a quote-unquote classroom, a place to learn socially and academically, or through adult modeling of the expected interactions in our building. So tonight, I'm going to move through topics as they relate to our continuous improvement plan, which is lovingly known as the SIP. We love our acronyms in school. So we call our continuous improvement plan the SIP, and you might hear it referred to as that, which is completely aligned to our district strategic plan that I know you all are very familiar with. So we're going to start with positive culture and climate. This year at Madison, our goals are integrating social emotional learning and supports, and expanding opportunities for student voice. So what does that look like at Madison, inside the walls of Madison and inside our community? It starts with a morning check-in. So here at the bottom is a picture of the online morning check-in, and what's really important about this check-in is what happens after. Our SEL coach reads through each and every check-in, grades K through 5, and then decides the daily support that individuals or classrooms might need based on that feedback. Super powerful to keep our our students tier 1 ready for learning each and every day. A large part of our goal this year instructionally has been to encourage our students to express their own interests, ideas, and insights, finding their own powerful voice, but also helping them to be able to acknowledge and appreciate and listen to perspective and ideas other than their own. We are intentionally doing this through discussion and collaborative learning in the classroom. John Hattie's work on research and classroom discussion and cooperative learning, the research says that it yields some of the highest student growth effect sizes, 0.8 and 0.4, and in layman's terms, that means more than a year's worth of growth. We also have very high expectations at Madison for our students, and we teach them about being a learner and being a scholar. Both are equally important. We teach our students, and we explicitly tell them that learners show up to be taught, to have something given to them. And scholars are students that are ready to participate in the process. We understand that both are equally important, and we like to give them positive praise for both. But we're always looking for our opportunities to really shift from being taught to being actively participating in the process. Okay. Focus area number 2 is instruction that produces positive outcomes. This year, our SIP is focusing on ensuring all instruction and programming are culturally relevant and engaging, and ensuring all students have access to grade level standards. At Madison, co-teaching for English language learners is a priority, promoting language acquisition at the same time as learning grade level content. in the same lesson, in the same classroom. It also looks like letters training for our teachers. The research-based science of reading professional development that all teachers are getting in our building in learning cohorts that are supporting teacher collaboration and application of what they learn as we learn this together. It's also talent development classes for students that are demonstrating high achievement during the school day. We are curating culturally authentic classroom libraries every single year that are accessible to our students in their classrooms and represent our diverse student body and interests. And we are offering differentiated professional development to support all areas of our SIP. So the topics are developed through teacher feedback and co-led by Madison Teacher Leadership Team and district partners. Focus area number 3 is innovation. We're creating a culture of innovation where stakeholders respond to challenges through taking risks, which can be scary, but we're taking risks, leveraging lessons learned through the failure of taking risks, and finding solutions through collaboration. So this year, modern classroom cohorts are focusing on topics of ScreenPal, Google Classroom, and innovative application of the letters training with and for our students. Learning hubs and learning stations are for students. These are bright, engaging, and fun spaces that are equipped with everything a student would need to create, collaborate, or be inspired. We were working over the summer to maximize our space for student learning by taking advantage of smaller classrooms in this new way for students. And they've been a big hit. It's been really fun. I have some pictures right after this slide. Madison is also hosting school-wide enrichment for students. This is our second year of doing this. We are going to do that on our early release days of November 1st, February 7th, and May 1st. The topics are really varied and intentionally exposing students to hands-on experiences that help them to understand who they are as a person, to dive into their interests, discover new hobbies that might lie outside of a traditional classroom setting. These new experiences are going to act as a catalyst for new learning that can help students to personalize more challenging topics as they come up in class. We know new learning is easier for students that can tie it to something that they've experienced before. Some of the topics that our students are going to enjoy on this first enrichment day on November 1st are lots of different engineering topics: cooking, pumpkin carving, digital music creation, golf, art mediums, lots of art mediums, yoga, and more. We're also working on after-school activities that are being developed with our Family Advisory Committee, which you'll hear a little bit more later. These are activities that are going to be set for January through April, and we are surveying and partnering with parents to deliver these activities that we hope can be repeated or emulated at home. One example is a chess club that we're working on developing for January. We're also starting this year, brand new, academic and SEL pop-ins. And you'll see this in our video that we're going to play later. We have made a strong commitment with our teacher leadership team to our families that progress will be more accessible outside of our traditional school conferences. Administration, the ladies to my left and right, and myself, are going to host a table at family events. We've already been doing that, and allowing a quick survey of how our children are doing in school at every single event. These have been a real hit at Family Advisory Committee meetings and our family engagement events so far. We hold them inside and outside, and it's just been kind of fun. This is a picture of our learning hubs and learning stations. Stations are just outside of the classroom in an area that students can check out with teacher permission and supervision. And then the hubs, the picture on the bottom is a space where we can do an extension activity, a larger science experiment, a book club, but it's something that you would do with a teacher. What you see right there is an English language group of students with their EL teacher. And focus area number 5 is family and community engagement. Our objectives this year are to create school-based connections that bring together families, educators, and community, and to create systems and procedures to provide access and opportunities for all students and families. So at Madison, our families know that they're really important to us. We start each family meeting by honoring the fact that they're the first teacher, and we're trying to amplify and work with them to reach the goals that they have for their students. Our events are always well attended, and topics are solicited at goal-setting conferences through a survey of our families each year. This is how the after-school activities project is beginning, through Family Voice. It's something that they asked for. At the beginning of each of our Family Advisory Committee meetings, we start with an activity to unite, like our students do in morning meeting. We choose activities that help our families to know one another, sometimes with the help of interpreters. Our last meeting, we participated in a cross the line activity where family members made 2 lines on either side of the room facing each other, and a line is drawn down the middle of the room. And then we read statements like, cross the line if you speak 2 languages, cross the line if you're new to Madison, cross the line if you were a 742 student. This allowed our families to see each other's strengths and similarities before we started our work together. Next month, each family will be given 5 minutes to draw their favorite family activity and then come up with a title for their artwork. There will be a gallery walk to enjoy each family's art, and we're really excited about the potential for this committee in the future and adding Family Voice to our community school. And now I'm excited to share a video highlighting social emotional learning, Chinese immersion, and family engagement at Madison. It was hard to decide what to highlight in the video because it's so short, but these are the 3 areas that we chose. You may notice in the video that our immersion program attracts families from neighboring communities with open enrollment options. A big thank you to Tiffany Feline, to Ting Ting Jung, Amran Yusuf, and Amanda Johns for being our Madison stars tonight in this video. And also a shout out to Tammy DeLand and the district communication team that beautifully put together each of the highlights and the highlight reels each year. So thank you and enjoy the video.
Imagine every student need is met. So the SEL check-in form is something that I developed in partnership with our media specialist, and it allows students to let us know how they're coming into school that day. By doing that check-in, it allows us to take the temperature of the building so we can use it proactively and try to address those needs before they bubble up and become real issues in or out of the classroom. And it really allows our students to use their voice and know that they are valued and loved and heard. Really want to get kids to practice those skills like self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, to really understand the anatomy of their brain and how their brain works with their body and their emotions. So if they're coming in, they're feeling a little off, they have some strategies to monitor their own thinking, their own feelings, and really help manage those so that they can be really productive learners, right? And our SIP plan is positive climate and culture, innovative thinking, and we have our family engagement. So it's kind of like positive climate and culture and our family engagement are like our bookends or like the bars on the ladder that allow us to help our kids be innovative and do their best learning. So the learning stations are hallway spaces set outside of classrooms in each grade level area. They can use that space outside of their classroom as a place to work and collaborate and share ideas. And there's a whiteboard out there so they can really use it as a nice think space and just work together in a responsible and productive way. Imagine that.
Imagine every learner's need is met in the Chinese immersion classrooms. My name is Ting Ting Zheng, Zheng 老师, and I'm teaching 3rd grade Chinese immersion at Madison Elementary School. Immersion learning is about without moving anyone anywhere, but the target language, which is Chinese, is taught, practiced, and applied in a learning environment as authentic as possible. Chinese immersion students learn academic content and the target language at the same time. We know that each learner is a unique resource. Chinese immersion students receive opportunities to understand and appreciate other cultures than their own. Students benefit from the ability to communicate with others from diverse linguistic and cultural backgrounds, which leads to a broader and a deeper multiculturalism. Chinese immersion students benefit from being bilingual because it helps with problem solving, multitasking, and creativity. Bilingualism also gives students a greater sense of identity and increases their self-esteem. Imagine that.
Imagine every family is a partner. At Madison Family here, our engagement is a focal point this year. We are in our second year of Family Advisory Committee. Our committee includes Spanish, Somali. This year, our priority is family engagement. Here at Madison, we have our academics and SEL, social emotional learning check-ins. When families come to these events, our Family Advisory Committee, we have a place where they can go and actually check on their kids, where they are academically, where they are social emotional learnings, so that we can give them more, so they don't have to wait for conferences. During our goal-setting conference, we asked our families in a survey what topics they wanted to see when they come to meetings. We're very intentional about family voice and present family survey after school activities for students. That's our month. Family voice is very important at Madison. Imagine that.
All right, and now it's your chance to ask us any questions that you might have, and I invite my APs to answer questions too.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions or comments?
Sure.
Scott, go ahead.
Okay. I had three children go through Madison School, but it's been a while. I had a music teacher back then that was absolutely fabulous. Is she still around? And who is that? So we give her kudos.
Yes, that's Miss Karen Cruz.
Karen
She's amazing.
Cruz.
She does hold our family engagement near and dear to her heart, and she puts in a ton of work and energy and planning, and also has a crew of students that help her to put that together too. So she loves to get kids involved in that way too.
Great. The other thing I remember is a wading pool. Is that something you still have, or is that connected with the park?
During the summertime, yeah, there is a wading pool connected to the city park. But it looks like it's in our backyard, but it is in the city park. And I did see that there was, water in it this summer when I would come, so.
Do you have any activities in connection with that pool, let's say in June or September?
I'm not sure if the Boys and Girls Club or Kids Stop use it, but
Okay. What is actually involved in the check-in that you do with your students in the morning?
you want to answer that? I mean, I could, but I want to hear your voice. You want to talk about the check-in?
Sure. So each teacher is set up with an iPad in their classroom, and it's just a quick Google form where the students come in and they just really quickly pick their teacher, and then they select themselves, like a little picture of themselves, and then just an emoji of how they're feeling that morning. I do believe, do our older kids have space to write a little bit more? And then it goes into a spreadsheet that our SEL coach monitors every morning for any anomalies or concerns. And she has time built into her schedule every morning and every day to go and check in with anyone who shows up on that as being a concern or just needing a little extra on top of the students that she's already working with that are kind of on her radar.
I noticed you mentioned co-teaching. How do you pick people that get along with each other?
In co-teaching, they spend more time with the children, but our teachers are pretty well trained in co-teaching, so they know how to plan for that lesson, deliver that lesson together. And so really we base that on student need more than on teacher relationship. But if something like that did come up, we would sit down and have a discussion. But essentially, people are so well trained in the planning and delivery of co-teaching at this point that it goes really well and centers around what students need.
Do you pick teachers of similar age or similar backgrounds, or what goes into that?
Yeah, so it is a classroom teacher and an EL teacher in our school this year. So an English language teacher is delivering the language of the lesson. It could be vocabulary. It could be bringing in real items to describe vocabulary. It could look like differentiated practice for a student after they learn the core. But we're really focusing on how to deliver grade level content to students who speak different languages, sometimes 2 or 3 different languages, so they can learn core and language at the same time. Yeah.
So they're not necessarily working in the same expertise, they're kind of different expertises side by side.
And complementing each other for sure. And that the EL teacher has a very good pulse on where our students' language acquisition is at, so they can help teachers know when to call on students to increase a student who's learning language at the same time to increase their voice. So they will sit consultatively too about what students would be able to do, prime students for participation in core learning, and then it's really great. You should come by and see it sometime.
That'd be nice, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be great. I was wondering about the difference between learning stations and learning hubs, but I sort of got the feel the stations are outside and the hubs are inside.
Absolutely.
How do you teach English? I mean, we spend a lot of money to teach English. How do you go about doing that?
In elementary school?
Yeah.
Hey, that's a really good question. I would say that it starts with our standards. We, in elementary school, are very standards-based. Our teachers know the vocabulary, the syntax, all of the different things that go into a really good lesson. And I think that if you asked any elementary teacher, they'd tell you they're going to start with the standard. They're going to use that standard to use their curriculum as a tool to teach English. And if you're talking about like dual language or immersion, that's a whole nother conversation. But I feel like for all of our students, everyone's learning English. Like I'm still learning English and picking up different vocabulary, and that's what we're doing, with our students all along in school. Can I add to that? Yeah, absolutely.
Being a former first grade teacher at Madison as well, we also heavily focus on having really language-rich classrooms. So when you come into a classroom, you see a lot of labels, a lot of visuals with labels and things like that, so that students are constantly learning just different items, whatever it may be. They're just fully immersed in the language, similar to what the Chinese immersion classroom looks like. It's just a different immersion. So if you are a new to country English speaker, it's almost like an English immersion. You're in it and the language is everywhere. We have our fantastic EL teachers who are supporting that work and helping the gen ed teachers to, like you said, learn what students are ready to know, how they can beef up that language learning even more.
You mentioned Chinese immersion. Is that the only immersion program at your school? What is the connection with St. Cloud State and Confucian Institutes? Okay.
There is none. There is no Confucius Institute that exists at St. Cloud State, and so we have no relationship with the Confucius Institute.
What was St. Cloud State?
St. Cloud State provides some support for bilingual SEAL assessment in terms of proctoring, but that would be all. You're welcome.
I was looking at the data pack a little bit, and there seems to be a decline in enrollment. How's that affecting you guys?
It looks like a decline in enrollment, and I talked with Donna Roper about this before the meeting, and Donna, do you want to field that one?
Testing, okay. Thanks for the question. The enrollment data that you're seeing in the data deck is an unduplicated count of the students who were served at least 21 days by year. It's a trend view of the data, so all of the previous years are going to look higher than our 2024 numbers because, of course, we're early in the year. So by the time we get our final, what we call B file, it's a Mars state reporting file, we'll have a higher number in that box.
That helps.
Last year, if it helps you, we ended our year with 638 students, and I think my last count today was 647.
You're
So,
up. Okay, I think that pretty well covers, yeah, I'm good. Next.
All right, Heather? And then Natalie?
Thank you for joining us. Listening to you talking, particularly around the learner and the scholar, which takes us from a spectrum of kind of a passive to an active.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how that plays out, particularly between kindergartners to fifth grade? What do you see in the difference in terms of how they look at passive and active, or learner and scholar activities during their growth?
I think the easiest way for me to explain it would be to talk from a primary and then an upper elementary. So I'm going to take kindergarten, for example. In kindergarten, there are going to be core lessons, and the core lessons might be a little bit shorter, but now we've introduced play-based. And so in kindergarten, there will be a time for them to practice new learning and language through play, which is all incorporated into their day. And that's where the active part of that learning will happen. And teachers will help to, give students probes or sit side by side with students who might be playing side by side instead of playing together, and just working on really getting them ready to collaborate with one another. Because all students really start with side by side play and then move into that collaboration. In our upper elementary, it looks more like we may start by learning about a brand new topic, and I need to be given information. And then I'm going to take that to create something of my own, or maybe create with a partner or a group. And so that's really the progression that we're working on.
I stopped by your open house at the beginning of the year, and the engagement by your families is really impressive. Do you see that as part of, is it demographics? What would you say? Obviously you focused on that pretty extensively. What has built that over time?
I think that it existed. This is my second year at Madison, so it existed before I got there. I don't have a grandiose sense of like this is happening because of this team. Madison has always had a really strong family connection, family base. I think some of the things that we do, a lot of other elementary schools are doing the same thing. It's making sure that we're communicating in many different ways, in many different languages. We have made a conscious effort to do community walks with 742 district and also community walks on our own in our own neighborhood. And then, you know, I feel like we probably go above and beyond with just trying to connect with families when they come in and giving them that warm and welcoming, you know, greeting, hello, especially since you see in our data that we do have a number of families that come and they may not stay the whole year. But even if they're with us for 21 days and they end up, you know, one of the families that we got to serve, we feel very lucky that they were with us, and we want them, you know, to feel the same way about us. And so really focusing on that warm and welcoming, you know, environment that existed before we got there, and just maybe even adding a few more new things like the family advisory committee that we're trying to start. Yeah.
All of those kids are so cute. I just could not handle it.
I know,
They're so
right?
cute. I used to be a middle school teacher, and the sixth graders are so cute. I don't think I could do what y'all do, so thank you. The patience of a saint, for sure. So I love the SEL check-in. I think that is so beautiful. And so was she saying, your coordinator, that she came up with that?
So I believe that she and our media specialist
Okay.
sat down with this great idea, and they're like, how do we do this? I know that there are lots of buildings now that do SEL check-ins. We're not the only ones, but it was, I think, first done at Madison and kind of moved into more streamlined ways of doing it and collecting that data. One of the things that we didn't tell you is that she also looks at data trends inside different grade levels. And then she will talk to grade level teams, and that's how she might develop some in like tier 1 in classroom lessons, so that she can work smarter, not harder, right? And so she's working with grade level teams with that as well. Teachers also have access to that data, so they see that firsthand, so.
Wow, that's really great. So how do you choose the students who are in accelerated talent development? What's that process like?
So Laura Stebner and our talent development teachers use assessments that are delivered as we come into school in the fall, along with some other standardized assessments that are used in a culminating type of way to make decisions about high achievement in young scholars. And I believe letters actually, you know, went out today, maybe even. So we're on the precipice of starting those really awesome groups. But it is a multi-data point, you know, decision for students to be included in those extension activities.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
I really loved when you said at the beginning, every scholar is seen, heard, and what did you say about the
Ready
world?
for the world.
Ready for the
Ready
world.
for the world. It's the readiness,
Ah,
right?
it's beautiful. Thank you. I have a couple more things. First of all, I wanted to point out in the data deck some very exciting things that I saw, that your reading and math MCA scores exceeded your predictions in 2023. A majority of students met or exceeded their math and reading star growth as well. And multilingual learners showed greater progress in learning the English language, even more than statewide. So snaps and claps for y'all on that. That's really beautiful.
Thank you.
The last thing I have, and I'd love to hear from Amran, since we haven't heard from her yet. No pressure. You were beautiful in the video. But actually, each of you, I would love to know what makes Madison a community school to you. Amran has to go first, though.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Annie.
Thank you for putting me on the spot.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. I think it's the staff that shows up every single day. I think everybody that comes to Madison are people who are actually wanted to be there. I think that's the best way that I can describe. They're ready to meet the challenges and to support our families and support our kids. So the commitment is high, and the expectation that we have for each other is high. So I think that's, what do you guys think?
I would say trust.
So,
It's the trust factor for me. Like the kids say, for me, it's the trust.
It's the trust for me, exactly.
For that,
You're with it.
For me. I think that we're always building trust, we're building back trust. Sometimes it gets broken, and then we have to have a willingness to dig in and bring it back. But that's what community is, right? It's people that believe in each other, have ultimate trust in each other. We know that we're taking care of our community's most valuable resource. And so every opportunity that we have to really dig in with them, for them, that's what we're doing. So especially as a newer principal to the Madison community, for me, it's trust.
Gosh.
I know, right?
That's a tough one. Like both of my colleagues said, there are so many things. We have an amazing community of families and kids that some of our students have brothers and sisters in high school now who have gone through Madison, and we have families that just want to open enroll because they've had siblings go through Madison and they want to stay in Madison because of the commitment of the staff members. There's just something special about Madison that you can't necessarily always put your finger on. And it is that caring, that welcome, that commitment each and every day, whether it's an assistant principal directing traffic with pom-poms in the morning, or
As you do.
dancing down the hallways, or whatever it is, to find the joy each and every day with our kids and our families, and have those high expectations and celebrate every moment that we can with them. It's just a great place.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to celebrate here, so thank you, guys.
Thanks for coming tonight. I am very happy to see a lot of the things that you're doing. I think that there's a lot of good things going on at Madison, and I'm very happy to see that. I do have a couple of questions, and I want you to understand they're not coming from a place of negativity, but it's from the data deck, and specifically from the school climate survey. Two things when I look at the answers within the climate survey, two things kind of stuck out to me. One was that across the board, there's in every answer, there's at least 10 people that are saying strongly disagree. And it almost seems as though there's like maybe 10 who just went through and just check. And I'm wondering if that was looked into at all, or if that would be the case, or if there's another explanation for it. But there's usually questions in climate surveys where nobody answers strongly disagree, and that kind of stuck out to me. Just like I said, just across the board, every single answer is at least 10. And the second thing that stuck out to me was in the peer relationship portion of the climate survey. Those answers kind of shocked me. It's in students, no, let's see here.
Yeah, will you read it? The one that.
Students at my school are kind to each other, and 40% of the students said no. And to me, that's a shocking number, because usually that one gets answered very high, as in, yes, we are very kind to each other. And the other one was, at my school, students work on listening to others, and it's about the mid 30% on that one that was where the answer was no. I'm wondering, is there a cause that you can think of as to why that would be high? Or because I would think that's I don't know, I'm just in my head, that would be a tip off for bullying, or predecessor to bullying. And I'm just wondering, what's your reaction? Let me just say, not do you know the cause, just let me say,
Right,
what's
right.
your reaction to those numbers?
Yeah, so we saw that data too, and to us, we use some of that data to set our goals. And you could see that, if you look back in our slide deck, how we set some of our student goals based on our student climate survey. We also look at the time of the year that's taken. There was another data point in there where it said, how do you feel about the school year? And kids could write in. And it was right at the end of the year, and one of the words that came up often was sad. And we're like, well, they're not sad. They're actually sad to leave Madison, or that the school year is going to be done. And so when we take a look at student data that says 40% of our students are, feeling a particular way, what we want to do is also look into other data points that we have. So we will take a look at things like our student check-in and lessons and other data points that we have. We also were looking at that and going, wow, that seems pretty high. So we acknowledge that, and it's part of what we have set our goals in our positive culture and climate around for our students, for our staff. So we acknowledge it, and we're hoping that, those numbers look different this year after some of that work with classroom lessons with our SEL coach. Does that answer most of it? Okay.
I'm a little biased because, well, 3 of my kids, now just 2, and my 6th grader does miss it right already. And last year she was like, do I still get to go to the family nights? And that's huge. So that's just, everything has gone better than expected, at least for my kids for the most part. So just wanted to thank you for that. And just every time I step in there, just seeing the staff go above and beyond to make sure people feel welcome, like that environment is living that social emotional learning stuff. So good job, A+. Like seeing that. There's some oddities in the surveys there. I have firsthand from my kids. They still love it, even with difficulties. So.
Thank you all for coming and for the work that you're doing. I have several questions. Do kids have fun doing yoga?
Some of them. Yeah.
Okay. Still want to know how the kids do yoga at that age.
Sometimes it's, it's not yoga like you would think. It's not like hot yoga in the gym or anything. Typically, it's done with, large screens, and it's going to be cartoony, and they're following some of their favorite characters and yoga poses and things like that. Mm-hmm.
Ah.
It's kid yoga.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm really curious, still curious
Yeah.
about it. I do yoga.
Mhm.
You're old. Yeah. Okay. How do you come up with the idea of the family nights, checking your, so you go with the families to check on their kids, right? To check in the progress?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
How does that work?
So were you asking how we came up with it or how we do it?
Both.
Okay, so I'll talk about the vision.
Okay.
And then which one of you wants to talk about that?
I can talk about how.
Right. Okay, so the vision came out of some reading that we had been doing about making sure that families have more access to how their students are progressing through social emotional learning in our schools and academically how they're doing. And we know that the traditional conference is really important because it's going to give you benchmark and really in-depth information from a classroom teacher who spent a lot more hours and time academically, social emotionally with students. And then we just wanted to be able to offer that in a little bit different way. Obviously, it's not the classroom teacher that's delivering it. So I'll let the ladies talk about what marks we're using to talk about.
So when they come in and then they wanted to check in, we're just gonna go and actually go into our data to look at where the kids are, you know, like the benchmark where, if they are proficient, you know, like, and using like last year's data, because this year, you know, like they haven't taken the, you know, like the MCAs. So just using the last year's where they were, and to give them, okay, this is where they're at, and also to actually talk to them, and they said, okay, well, this is where they're at, and you know, like in reading, you know, like they're not proficient, what can I do? And then giving them resources, okay, this is what you can do at home, you know. If it's math, okay, you can work in this kind of problem, this is where they need help. So it's just a preview of how they're doing, and I think families actually enjoyed the 2 times that we actually did, and they know what's going on with their kid. And the most important thing is that they're not waiting like a couple of months to get that information, and they can work with their kids, whatever they're struggling with.
So at our most recent family engagement night last week, I think, was was a math-focused evening. And we had a table set up with some family resources around our new math curriculum as well. So as families came in, they were able to just check in and say, you know, I'd like to know how my kid is doing so far this year. And we do have some assessments starting right now that we're able to look at and just kind of see and talk our way through a little bit with parents. But we're also able to say, you know, we have this great new math curriculum. Here's what it looks like in the classroom. Here's what they're doing. Here's some resources. We had it available in multiple languages, and they were able to take those resources home. Again, like Amran said, there's some great ways that the math curriculum provides for them to work at home and support their students, really easy to follow. I think it's called like a refrigerator sheet of things that you can ask your student about math and help them with math. And they loved it. And so now our next family engagement night is our next one literacy or STEM? STEM. So we'll have some more ideas and guidance, and then we're just there to answer any questions they may have or take notes, and then we'll get back to you, you know, the next workday when we have an answer for you, if we don't have an answer there.
That is wonderful. I think that idea is brilliant. And I have seen many families wanted to know more about the kids and finding out that activities at a school not always give them that. And also not waiting for the conference and knowing what the conference is. The conferences sometimes are not as useful to parents. So I would be also curious to know, as you progress, how do you find parents find their conferences to be giving them what they wanted to be given, and also how you match what the parents think that they're getting out of the conference with what you expect them to get out of those conferences?
Actually, what we do is every conferences we have a parent survey that they end with. Okay, what went well? You know, what didn't? You know, like what can we improve? What do you want to see change? What can we add? So we do solicit that information from parents.
And is that for every school?
Many schools do that in different versions. Some have a survey option, some have them go through the media center and talk with staff. But I would say our elementaries do a wonderful job of getting parent feedback and then refining their processes to do even better next time.
Wonderful, great, thank you. I shared Al's concern about students replying to the survey that 40% of them thinking that their kids are not nice. And you mentioned that you work in the strategies for that as part of the strategies. How can you tell me more about what strategies have you set up and how are you talking about that?
With our students?
Mm-hmm.
So the SEL check-in in the morning is one of those strategies. It's written into our SIP. It's part of our measurement dashboard. We respond to anything in there that would have to do with peer-to-peer relations immediately. Those are, prioritized if there's any kind of problem in a classroom or an issue that needs to be solved between students, we do that right away. Like I said, the 40% on there is a little bit confusing to me because I wouldn't say that that's the temperature that I have of the building or that the APs have of the building, and we solve 99% of the student-to-student challenges that might come up. So it could be, students seeing, it might not be something that they experience, but maybe something that they're a witness to. It's not their personal experience, and the way the question was asked is something that we have to work on with Donna when we do our survey again this year. We want to be able to reevaluate that, but I want to look more closely at how we asked the question so that we're really measuring what we were intending to measure. And Donna and I will walk that through before our student survey again.
So you just made me think about something. I've been part of other organizations, and other organizations that I had been part, we do service to the public, and then we have found that doing service, anonymous service to the public, are really worthless in many senses because you don't really get context. You lose the context on it, which is what you're talking about. We have gotten a lot more better data, at least in one of the organizations that I used to be part of, when we were stopping doing anonymous surveys and just getting the ability to go back to the person that's give us the comment and qualify it. Yeah, just a thought, Donna. Not idea if that will be useful or not, or how you will do a survey. We probably won't do those big, large surveys, and but some of those might be interesting to think
We might piece that out into a two-part question so that we have more specific data about that data point.
Yeah, still thinking about it. Thank you. I also, that since we're in the surveys, I also didn't find that useful to have the 24 enrollment, because I had the same thought about enrollment not being a trend, because we don't have the 21 days. I don't know, maybe not putting it there would it be less confusing. Yeah. So one of you at some point said that people wanted to be here. That was Madison. So I wanted to ask you, I think that you were talking about staff people in the community, people in the students. I wanted to ask you, in terms of the staff, what do you talk to your staff about, or how does your staff want to be here in Madison and here in the school district? What do you know about that? And tell me, what do you tell them? Tell me if that's true or not.
It is true. It is true. Actually, tonight, there were a few teachers that really wanted to be here. And what teachers wanted to come and actually, and then the APs were like, oh, I want to come, I want to be there. I'm like, all right. So I'm glad they're sitting, right next to me. But I would say that it is very true. It's a very true statement about the teachers that have this really solid commitment, not just to Madison, but to 742. They believe in our visioning, right? For our students and how we're preparing them all the way from kindergarten to high school and graduation and then beyond. So I do believe that that's a true statement. What I say to them, how do we sustain that culture and climate, is something that just at my last staff meeting, we had in-depth conversation about, making sure that what I'm telling you tonight about the commitment to having a willingness to fail and then learning from that failure, and you would see that on my innovations slide, that our teachers are working really hard at learning the new things that we want to deliver to students. And it starts with a principal being able to say, you're going to do your best and we're going to learn, this together, and, you're going to be okay. And the students in front of you give you a sense of urgency to know all the things right away. But I think it's just, making sure that we're there and we're supportive and that we see them, we hear them, and, trying to give them what they need in order to pour into their students in their classrooms. I think that they feel that support, and that's why they want to be there, and they were there before we got there. Like I said, they were there before we got there. Maybe not you, you were a teacher there. But I really do believe that that is a true statement. And I think it was Lindsay that spoke to that commitment at Madison. Oh, was it you, Amran? Okay. Yep.
I would also add that, yes, I was a Madison teacher. I started there in 2011 and did 2 years at South before coming back as an assistant principal at Madison. I think if you look at our staff numbers, we have the majority of our staff have been there for multiple years. We have a lot of staff that started with us in the fall of 2019, and we all know what happened in the spring of 2020, and for some of them, that was their first year teaching, and bless them, they're still with us. And that was a hard year of teaching, but we have many, many staff members who have been there for years and continue to show up every day, ready for our kids, ready to be their champions, and they're amazing people to work with. And I think it's less about what is said to staff and more about action and what just happens on the daily within the walls and how we support each other and lift each other up and are there for each other and laugh with each other and just create that climate that you want to be part of.
What about, you talk a lot about teachers, which I suppose are the majority of staff, but what about the staff that are not teachers, like the kitchen staff and maintenance staff? And
yes. I can tell you our first cook and our second cook, I think, have both retired twice from Madison and are still there. They keep coming back. Karen Cruz is in her 47th year at Madison. Yes, I think she is #1 on the seniority list for the past couple of years. And we have the majority of our custodial staff has been there since I was in the classroom, and I've been out of the classroom for several years now. We have several of our lunch supervisors who
will show up even when they have fever because they don't want to miss, because they know how important their job is.
And they've been there for years. I mean, years and years. Gosh, I'm trying to think of all of some paraprofessionals. We just had last year 2 paraprofessionals retire who had each done over 30 years at Madison, which is very rare to see nowadays, but we still have a few more that are
coming up.
that have 20 plus, 10 plus years, and it is once you find that you fit there, it's a lot of people stay, and it's amazing.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. And I have probably an unfair question for you, Becky. I'm going to ask it anyway. So, what do you prefer, Madison or Discovery?
Oh, girl.
Plug out of yours.
Oh, I plead the 5th. I plead the 5th. Shame on you. I love them all.
We do have to correct her often and remind her where she is. Couple of Freudian slips every once in a while.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
I was just going to say, since if anybody is watching this, they don't know that the data deck says that that survey is for 3rd through 5th graders. And I'm just remembering back to 3rd grade and how that was the start of between all of my kids and their friends. And so I bet K through 5 would look a lot different. Not that we still have to look at it, right? But I just think that's worth putting out there in the atmosphere.
I think 40% of kids witness kids being unkind to each other. I think that's what it says. But I think that, you know, we need to piece that one out. And you're right, it's 3rd through 5th grade. And unkindness sometimes does happen in elementary school, especially in 3rd through 5th grade. But we're going to do better with that question so that we can be accountable to making sure that it improves. Yeah.
Well, I get the pleasure of wrapping up the evening. And I just want to hit a couple highlights. First, I think it's really important to note that Madison is 75% free and reduced lunch, right? We know, I don't know the exact number, but we know a high mobility rate, and we know that you serve the majority of the homeless shelters and Anna Marie's, right? And I bring that up because that means many of our students at Madison are bringing additional barriers to learning, to feeling safe, and to feeling like they belong. And I think that you guys do an incredible job of creating the conditions for all of our students, including the ones who are bringing those additional barriers, to feel those ways. And I see it when I'm there, and I see it in your visuals. I hear it in your language, and I feel it. And I think we heard it from Zach, people who are at Madison, they feel that. And so I want to acknowledge that. And then I want to highlight what Natalie said, that from the data decks, right, really you are, as I don't know, those of you who read the Star Tribune article, right, you are one of the beat the odds schools. And in terms of academic gains, outperforming expectations. And I think that needs to be said very publicly and celebrated. And I think we all have a lot to learn. And I appreciate, and I heard it tonight, right, about high expectations, about increasing instruction time, about being proactive about removing those barriers. So I just needed to call that out for our audience and our listening public. And I think Becky was very, as she will be, I think she was very modest in talking about family engagement. I do know that Madison has a strong community, but Becky and her team built an incredible community of family engagement and very intentional activities, and the ways that you honor and respect families. Right? I heard you talk about them being the first teacher, right? And I think that attitude and that perspective was very on display at the former school that shall not be named, and now at Madison. And so I appreciate, right, and I do agree that the Madison community is special and reaches out and connects with families. And I also want to say, Becky, that you do an incredible job along with your team and really focusing on that essential aspect of learning. So to all three of you, thank you very much for creating a model school.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us. Okay, then we have one more informational item tonight. We have Superintendent Lori Putnam presenting inclement weather protocols.
Thank you, Chair Haas. Hard to believe that we're having this conversation already, and yet here we are. I know that I was not here for the Halloween blizzard, but I've heard many a story. So we know that we can all expect sooner or later, let's hope later, to be challenged by weather at some point in the school year, and that can take the form of icy roads. It can take the form of lots of snow, and it can take the form of very dangerous cold. And as superintendent, I am charged with making those decisions about school closures, along with many of the partners in this room here. And I just want to say, as we head into this, please do remember, all of our listening public, that I am an educator and not a weather forecaster. And our accuracy rates of meteorologists are vary. In fact, I heard something the other day, and I thought, I'm remembering this, and I'm going to say it tonight. The job of a meteorologist is, take it or not, right? The job of a meteorologist is not to predict the weather, but to get you to come back and watch the next forecast. I'm like, yes, like I'm always hooked. So I say all that to invite our community to continue the grace that you offered last year as we do our very best to keep our school community safe and balance safety along with the importance of being in school each and every day. So now, Dr. Ivar, thank you. So here are the guiding principles around school closures. Please know that we have a St. Cloud Metro partnership with Sartell and Sauk Rapids Rice. So we make decisions together and are committed to that, knowing that we have very similar weather often and that we share a lot of families, and our businesses also really rely on that support or common decision making. We prioritize student and staff safety is first, and then right after that, knowing the need to be in school, to be learning, to be creating the connections, to be warm and fed are also incredibly important. We know that we want to be predictable in our decision making, and we want to be timely in sharing information. So those are the 5 principles, or the 5 that will guide the work that we do around weather closings. So you can take a look at the St. Cloud Metro partnership. As I said, we've agreed to make decisions together. Though I do want to point out that if and when school closures occur, the partner schools all have their own flexible or e-learning plans and the ways at which we utilize the e-learning versus a quote-unquote snow day. And so while we will make the same decision, the outcome may not always look the same for each of us. When looking at student and staff safety, as I said, that is our priority. However, I also want to point out that based on board policy and in our student handbook, parents or guardians always have the option to keep their child from home during inclement weather if they believe that it is the safest option for their child. When people express concern to me, I will remind them that my job is to make a decision, the best decision I can for over 9,000 students and over 2,000 staff. And their responsibility is to make the best decision they can for their 1 or their 2 or their 3. And those often coincide and they don't. Sometimes they will deviate, and so we certainly want families to know that they have that option. We are committed to sustained access to education. So in the event of a school closure, our families can expect e-learning, which has been called flexible learning. We are transitioning to the language of e-learning. We'll go into the fact for the first 5 days of school closures, typically. We saw last year that we were returning after a winter break, and our students had been off for almost 10 days, and it was not an effective use of students' learning time to try to do e-learning when they had been on break. So typically, we'll go straight into e-learning, given that rare exception. If we exceed more than 5 days, then we will partner with our school board to determine, the school board chair, to determine if makeup days are required. And students will be receiving instruction through choice boards, which will be coming home in November. Seesaw, which is at the K-5, and then Schoology, which is 612, and those are our online platforms for delivering learning. And students will have access to teachers and support staff during those e-learning days. We try to be predictable in making our decisions. So here are the parameters that we will use. So at 35 degrees below zero, and that's either base temperature or wind chill, forecasted or reported, that will trigger a school closing. We will use a St. Cloud location. We know that when we combine the 3 St. Cloud Metro areas, districts, that's a wide range to cover. So we won't be looking at Rice, we won't be looking at Clearwater. We'll look at use the St. Cloud location to determine that cold weather closure. And the service that we will use is the National Weather Service, or NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association. If the temperature is predicted to rise above 35 degrees by 9:30, we may consider a 2-hour late start. When we take a look also about predictable decision making, we do take a look at forecasted snow, ice, wind, and accumulation of those weather factors, and then the current road conditions as reported by transportation teams. So we are in close contact with the counties that we serve. Gary communicates closely with Stearns, Superintendent Bergstrom communicates with Benton, and then we also pay attention to Sherburne and Wright. So we are watching those very closely, and our transportation teams are out on the roads beginning at 4 a.m. And so just want to say an early shout out and appreciation for the work that they do. We will avoid early release decisions whenever possible. We know that those present some challenges for families. Sometimes that can be a safety risk when we have families who are at work and we are sending our littles off early, and that's hard for our family sometimes always to be able to respond as quickly as they may need. And so whenever we can, we will avoid that. We will be timely in our decision making. So we will communicate by 9 o'clock the evening before if we have made a decision. If you have not heard from us by 9 o'clock, you will not hear from us that evening. The next morning, we will start phone calls again. We always aim to start at 5:25 notifying staff. At 5:30, we're able to notify families. And we are aware that for some staff who travel, that can be challenging. But we have a lot of communication that needs to happen. And we do want to give as much time as possible to be as accurate and clear as possible about what those weather conditions are going to be. Other important information that we just want to put out for our families is to please be sure you have a plan for your child in the event of a school closure, late start, or early release, and that those plans have been communicated to your child along with the classroom teacher and the school principal. And those are forms that are held or traded back and forth and held by the classroom teacher. In the event of a school closure or early release, there will be no activities or practices held. A very rare exception to the rule may occur in the event of a section or state level meet, and that will be agreed upon by participating superintendents. Those are not always, we aren't always able to reschedule those, and so again, that's very rare. We are excited and grateful that KidStop will again provide childcare at selected locations in our school district during cold weather school closures. And then we always encourage families to refer to our website for the most up-to-date and accurate information. And we welcome any questions from our board. This information will be, like last year, communicated via a webcast. I'll do a little webcast of the same presentation, the same information, and I will send that out to our families in English, Somali, and Spanish.
Thank you. Monica, then Scott.
Hi, Lori. One question that I have was about so you said that you're going to be telling people before 9 p.m. and then if something changes during the night, you will start telling them at 5:30, right?
Correct.
So is that, so let's say that you're watching the weather before 9 p.m. Have you thought about or what are the pros and cons about telling people, kind of giving them a warning to start preparing? This might happen, may not, but may do, or is that not recommendable?
You know, if we did that, we would be sending out a lot of communications. There are many, many nights when we are watching the weather. So our best recommendation would be for families to also be partnering with us in that and know that if that temperature is starting to get close to that 35, if the roads are expected to be extremely icy in the morning or very high snow accumulations, to just start watching those the news channels, listening to the local media outlets, and then watching for information from us.
Scott, did you have a question?
One time we had a really cool wind chill chart. I was wondering, is that on the website or what can be referenced?
I believe it's on the NOAA or the National Weather Service website. We have not posted it, but it is certainly available for public view.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next we're moving on to an action item tonight. We have the approval of use of the fiscal year 24 one-time funds presented by Amy Scallerud, Executive Director of Finance and Business Services. And joining her will be Superintendent Putnam.
Guest appearance. And Amy will be popping that up. So we are excited tonight to, in addition to looking for the approval of the use of the fiscal year 24 one-time funds, we do just want to do a little bit of a retrospective around our new state funding. I was asked by the board to do a review of how are we using our new funding to make sure that we are meeting the goals of our strategic plan and making sure that we are directly impacting student outcomes. So what you're going to see this evening is a little bit of a preview. Some of it will look very familiar. It is in fact some of the same information that we gave in July, but we wanted to do just a quick review so that our listening public and you know, in July, not as many people were tuning in as I'm sure are this evening. So happy to do this. We know that state funding provides opportunities for us to invest in education, and that we have to use these funds wisely. They are limited, and we are called on to be good stewards of the public's dollar. So we have prioritized those funds based on student data, based on information that was gathered through listening sessions and surveys with our staff, and any new mandates from the state. So here you can see a summary of the new state funding. For those of you who can't quite see it, there's a listing of all of the revenue sources on the left. Fiscal year 24, the amounts you'll see under that column. Fiscal year 25, the amounts are there, and then the total. So you can see that the formula increase, the 4 and the 2%, that was allocated by the board to negotiations, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But when you look down at the bottom, far right corner, you can see that we had, taking off that money that was allocated to wages and benefits, that we had just under $7 million to work with. And so as we move on to the next slide, I want to really say that we are grateful for the ESSER funding that carried us through the pandemic and is carrying us through this year. It is that overlap of ESSER funds and the state funding that will gives us the one-time funding that Amy will discuss briefly, or upcoming. Also briefly, probably, but just to remind all of us and that we are all, as a board, as an administration, as a school community, we are committed to 3 things in this district: to academic achievement, mental health and physical well-being, along with arts and activities, opportunities, and access. And so the funding that we received either through ESSER and that will be continued on thanks to the funding from the state, all focus on these 3 core areas, and were prioritized for lowering class sizes, providing instructional supports and intervention, and additional curriculum for school, ongoing funding for school counselors, chemical health counselors, general education social workers, and mental health advocates or mental health support services. And then in looking at the additional funding that we put towards increased arts and activities to promote high achievement, engagement, and healthy lifestyle. The board, when we did say, I referenced that the 4 and the 2% of the increase was allocated by the board for negotiations. And so I am grateful for that, as is our negotiating team and those who have settled their contracts. So some of the money that was allocated was set aside. We set aside over $2 million in addition to the increase on the state formula, to support additional time for teacher collaboration to improve student outcomes and address the feedback from our teachers. We heard them say, we need more time to do the things you're asking us to do, like the co-teaching that we just heard, like BAR, those interventions and programs and strategies that we know change outcomes for kids. And so we are grateful for that allocation to be able to provide that additional time. And then we also were able to provide the targeted funding for non-licensed staff, and the board prioritized an additional $750,000 for our non-licensed staff groups to identify the gaps, or to address the gaps identified in that external wage study that we reviewed over the last few months. And because of those dedicated funds, we are able to proudly say that we've settled contracts for 7 of our 8 hourly employee groups to date. And so that is very much appreciated. So that's a quick review about the ways that we have prioritized ESSER funds along with the new state funding to directly meet the goals of the strategic plan and to make sure that the things that we know that were effective, the academic achievement strategies, the mental health and well-being strategies, and the access to arts and activities is able to be continued after those ESSER funds expire and into the 24-25 school years and beyond. And now Amy's going to walk us through the budget priorities for the one-time funds.
So as was just mentioned, we have that overlap of the new money from the state with the ESSER funds, which provides a somewhat unique opportunity to have some funds available for some one-time purchases that we may not otherwise be able to support. In the board agenda attached is a more detailed list, but we've kind of in the interest of time and not going through a whole long list, it's certainly there, but we'll highlight the things that are really either the big items or the things that we are really excited about instructionally that we want to focus on. But this is kind of a condensed version. We've talked before as we've talked about priorities where we're really trying to focus on that building safety, security, instruction, and all of those core supports. So the big things that I'll draw attention to on this list are science, CTE, and instructional resources. So we have $300,000 allocated for science equipment and CTE, either equipment or renovations of spaces. That would primarily be for our junior highs and for Apollo. We know that we have a gap in terms of facility equity between Apollo and Tech, and so there's some things to address that. The instructional resources is a whole long list. A couple that we'll highlight are some funds dedicated to do something with that Westwood property that we had donated, and so there's money allocated for that so that we can start get some instructional programming that incorporates that new property. And then another one that is directly tied to the work that we're doing with letters is decodable text resources for our elementary schools. So those are a couple that we wanted to highlight there. A couple of the big things that you'll see are playgrounds. So playgrounds are expensive. They are not LTFM eligible, unfortunately. And so we have a current process review in place where we had some inspections done. And so we'll work through those recommendations to determine where we need replacement. But we know that we have some that either need to be replaced or need to be enhanced and expanded. So you see $500,000 for that. And then the other significant item is the Apollo Theater upgrades. So there is a portion of the Apollo Theater upgrades that can come out of the $15 million that was issued for the LTFM bonds. Things like flooring, replacement of seats, but any sort of upgrades as it relates to equipment or technology or those things or any sort of renovation that may be needed to really bring that space up to a modern state-of-the-art facility isn't LTFM eligible. And so again, we're fortunate that we have these one-time funds because we have items that come up like this that have been on our want list and our wish list and our to-do list, but no dedicated funding to support those. And then the other one that I'll just mention quick is the athletics and activities. A significant portion of that was to restore fields, particularly at South, to make sure that we're being compliant with Title IX and having equitable facilities across boys and girls fields, and so that's within there. And then another thing that we were excited about that has been included in that is the yard signs. So you've probably seen those around. That is one of the items that's within there to be able to purchase those again. We had a partnership with Leaf and a donation to do that 2 years ago, and so we were able to do that again and provide those for all of our junior high and high school students. So those were the ones that I just going to focus on, but if there are questions, certainly on what's encompassed within in any of those line items or on any of the things I just went over, please feel free to ask.
Thank you.
The building safety security. So that's primarily radio replacement and upgrades. So the district radios, that's a significant cost, and then there's some other small things. And some that's unallocated within that too. as we work and we do the listing sessions again with buildings, there's some money within there in case little things come up that we can address.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Oh, sorry.
Yep, action item.
We are looking for a motion to approve the use of the fiscal year '24 one-time funds in the amount of $2,825,000.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion by Scott and a second by Natalie. Zach, can you call vote?
Scott Andreessen,
Yes.
Heather Weems,
Yes.
Monica Shigeru Schwartz, Shannon Haas.
Yes.
Zach Dorholt is yes. Al Dahlgren,
Oh.
I apologize. How would you like to do this?
would you like to temporarily withdraw your motion, Scott?
Okay.
Sorry, Al.
Is that 2 million, what are we approving? 2 million,
825,000,
And is
which
that
is
what
the
those
total
add
of
up
those
to?
items. Yes.
that's the total of those items?
Yes, yes, and the detail list is in the board agenda. So it's the same list we went over at Finance Committee with the one item that had been removed by Finance.
Okay, but those dollars are removed.
Yes.
We're not approving those dollars tonight. We can approve those at a later date.
For that specific item?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
That's my question. Okay.
Sorry about that. Okay, so Scott, are we back on with your motion?
Back on with the motion.
Okay, and Natalie's second. Love it. Are we gonna, are we starting over or are
Yeah,
we? All
just
right.
might as well. Scott Andreessen, Natalie Copeland,
Yes.
Al Dahlgren,
Yes.
Zach Dorholt says yes. Shannon Haas.
Yes.
Monica Shigeru Schwartz,
Yes.
Heather Weems.
Yes.
All right, thanks, guys. Sorry about that. Now, moving on to proposed new board policy 425, the second reading, staff development and mentoring, presented by Dr. Mike Rivard, Assistant Superintendent of E12 Education Services.
Good evening, Chair Haas, Dr. Putnam, and members of the board. Tonight is our second reading of our new board policy 425, staff development and mentoring. No significant changes were recommended from the school board with the paragraph A, kind of a cleanup of what that paragraph had read before. The highlighted section in A, I'll give you a moment to look at, but it reads, the superintendent or designee will establish a professional staff development committee. The function of this committee will be to create a staff development plan and assist our site development, site professional development teams in creating a site plan consistent with the goals of the district staff development plan. It'll also be charged with evaluating staff development efforts at the site level, a much cleaner version of the paragraph that's above. And that would be our report so far for Board Policy 425.
Okay, this is a second reading. Any questions or concerns? Otherwise, it's coming to the consent agenda for a third reading. All right, thank you. We have Superintendent Lori Putnam presenting the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Chair Haas. I am excited to recognize one of our faculty this evening. I want to give a shout out and congratulations to Mr. Kerry Cobb, who is a science teacher at Tech. The U of M recognizes a secondary science educator each year for excellence in teaching and mentoring. And so he was the recipient of the Sarah L. Tillman Memorial Science Teaching Award. And he received that for his dedication to students, his teaching strategies that help students pass classes and prepare for AP exams, but also acquire skills and knowledge that are transferable to their life after high school. So congratulations to Mr. Kopp. And I also want to say congratulations to our Tech and Apollo soccer programs. Both our boys and our girls are doing exceptionally well this year. Congratulations to both Tech and Apollo, a a thrilling and heartbreaking event, both, as Tech won the conference championship, beating Apollo in a real white knuckle situation. So congratulations to all of them, and also to Paige Torelli, who is going on to state in girls tennis. And I want to also recognize and thank Dr. Harris and Ryan Cox, science teacher Alyssa Kyle, and Tech High School senior Jack Oker. All of that team and I presented at the MASA, which is our Minnesota Association of School Administrators, last week. We did a presentation on how to co-create guidelines for AI use in secondary schools. And Ryan and Katie Herbold led an incredible team of teachers and students and parents through a process to really learn from each other and listen to one another's perspectives to develop those guide rails. Those will now go through a listening process with other members of our secondary community and will end up coming to the board. So you'll get to see and hear that process and their outcomes, and they're remarkable. So that was congratulations to all of them. And I just have to give a shout out that the School Boards Association, MSBA, actually reached out to us to ask for our presentation as they look to create a model policy. They wanted to use some of our work as a learning and foundation tool. So, woohoo. I wanted to just also let people know a couple information items that Chair Hawes, Vice Chair Dahlgren, and I, along with members of our team, Nikki, Gary, Amy, will be partnering with leadership from the Boys and Girls Club and Waite Park administration to do a road trip to Omaha. A very quick turnaround, many hours on the bus to do some school visits to learn from state community organization and school district officials on how they work collaboratively to maximize funding from states to be able to expand services to students and families. So we are going to explore those options and are very excited about that and grateful for the Boys and Girls Club who are they received some funding to be able to fund the trip for us and help us learn along the way. And then just an awareness that we have a bipartisan Senate visit coming next Tuesday to Tech High School. Members of the state education policy and finance committees will be meeting with staff, students, and some administrators to listen to our community, to hear how their changes over the legislative session impacted our experiences. And so thank you to Jason and Principal Kenzie and Tammy for coordinating that event. It's easy for me to say, but it's a lot of work to pull something like that off to make sure our students are prepared to really engage well. And so we're excited about that opportunity for our students and our staff, and grateful for the bipartisan group of legislators who are coming out to talk with us. So that concludes my superintendent. Oh, Al.
Are there any local legislators, or is that bipartisan from the state?
It is bipartisan from the state. We have no local legislature. Why can't I say that word tonight? No local legislators on the education policy or finance committees.
So it's just the committees.
It is the committees, yeah, and they may have some aides coming along, but it's 12 people from those committees. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then we have Board of Education Standing Committee reports. I believe we have two. First up, Achievement, Integration, and Equity, Chair Natalie Copeland.
Guess what? We didn't meet in this room. We met in a different room, but it was still at 8:30, y'all. So, and we have really deep discussions for 8:30 in the morning, do we not? We did get to hear a letters update that Assistant Superintendent Nikki Hansen gave to us, and she informed us that 305 elementary staff have enrolled in letters training, which started in this September, and it will take 2.5 years to complete. There are 21 learning sessions alone just in this school year, and that learning is usually done in staff cohorts of job-alike peers. And resources and application tools will be given to staff as they learn to utilize them such as what we just approved with decodable text, right? Okay, ooh, I'm putting it all together. Great. Ongoing discussion that we continue to have is what makes a well-rounded student. So today we continue to discuss the process and the timeline for this deep conversation and how we will put the conversation into action. We talked a lot about the portrait of a graduate discussion, and this discussion actually began in our district. Ryan Cox was telling us 5 years ago, and it was decided that we would pick it back up after BAR, which is Building Assets, Reducing Risks, was implemented in our high schools. Now as the discussion is started again because BAR is implemented. And we will be hearing next time from Ryan as to where their conversations went 5 years ago and then linking them to our discussions today. And that'll all happen on November 15th. And that's it.
Thank you. And then Board Finance and Audit Committee, Chair Al Dahlgren.
Yeah, we met last Friday, the October 13th. Amy Scalarud, myself, Monica, Gary, Scott Andreasen, Lori, Carl Kane, and Juanita Temez were all present. We also had a couple of black cats in the corner and some spiders. We walked under ladders on the way into the room. The agenda consisted of 3 items. The first one was the one-time funds that we voted on today. Not going to go through the whole thing, but my questions, I want to clear up. Just my questions for that is that there was one other item on there, and that included some one-time funds for a temporary controlled entrance at Apollo. And the committee asked that that be removed from the list, but it can come forward. But the request was that we make sure that we're not doing this reactionary, but that we're actually getting something that's going to be very useful out of it. So the second item on the agenda was the Stopping School Violence DOJ grant. Gary reported that the district has been awarded a 3-year grant of $855,880 from the Department of Justice. A large part of the grant will be used for interfacing building mapping with the 911 system, enabling law enforcement to know exactly where the call is coming from and the location of the emergency. It will allow us into the systems of all 4 of our counties. It may be used for expansion for the use of a mobile app for communications during an emergency. The technology may include mapping, interface, mobile devices, as well as training for situational awareness and threat assessment. This will be part of the school safety item on the November 1st school board meeting agenda. So you'll hear about it in a few weeks. The third item, I believe, was in the consent agenda tonight, and that's the Altria vaping settlement. Amy reported on this settlement. It's an extension of the Juul class action lawsuit that the board previously approved a settlement agreement for. Altria is an additional defendant in the lawsuit and has agreed to a settlement agreement. The district's gross allocation is $52,775. After legal fees are deducted, the actual payment we will receive is approximately $34,000. And that's it for finance.
Okay, thank you. Then we have future agenda items. November board meeting and work session topics will include the 2024 Board of Education legislative platform, tentative agreements, if any, safe and secure schools update, and policy readings. At this time, does any board member wish to suggest a future agenda item? Okay. Then that was everything. So I'm looking for a motion to adjourn tonight's Board of Education meeting.
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, meeting is adjourned. It is 8:22 p.m. Have a good night. Thanks for watching. We'll be back November 1st.